Good afternoon, and thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Charlie Kaplan. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Brainware. Today's presentation is titled Microsoft and Brainware Touch-Free Data Entry. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump in. Like I said, today's presentation is sponsored by Brainware. I'm with Brainware. Brainware is a Microsoft Gold Certified Partner, but we'll talk about it in conjunction with Microsoft technology and how Brainware applications help drive demonstrable value from investments you may have in Microsoft technologies or be considering around Microsoft technologies. I've got three goals today when I think about this presentation, three things I want to do. One is I'll share several stories, a couple of case studies about how Brainware customers are creating value using these technologies in their specific organizations. The second piece is I want to describe to you the technology. It's really transformational technology for intelligent data capture and enterprise search, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that means, how it works, and then the third piece is I'll actually show you some demonstrations of what this technology does, so that hopefully by the end of today's presentation you've got a pretty good sense for, like I said, who we are, where the technology is playing, and how it can drive value on top of Microsoft. Okay, so I'm going to share a case study with you here in just a moment. Before I do that, though, let's go ahead and open up the first poll of the day. I've got several polling questions here, but like I said at the beginning, I like to keep it interactive. And so what I'm going to do is launch the poll, which should show up on your screen here. And the question is, which of the following document types would derive the most benefit from automation in your organization? And there are 5 different response choices. If you go ahead and pick one of those, that helps give me some sense for your interest or perhaps where you're thinking about automation. And I'll do my best to sort of reference that throughout today's program. I leave this open for just a few minutes until I try and get a pretty good percentage of you all in the audience to respond. It's usually a minute, maybe a little bit less. And then what I can do is actually share the responses with you. So thank you, everybody, for answering the question. As I can see, we're doing pretty well. All right. Very good. Okay. So if you didn't get a chance to share your response, you'll get to pick it up on the next one. So interestingly, I offered 5 different choices for this, and nearly 60% are looking at invoices and other accounting documents. I'm not surprised by that at all. There's a lot of talk and certainly a lot of movement in the areas of invoice automation, AP process optimization. Right behind that, or I should say second, is contracts and legal documents. Not surprising there as well. So we'll talk a little bit about how the technology can be used for classification and indexing of documents, and then of course there are other areas as well. So thank you for sharing that information. I'm going to start with a case study that's from the healthcare industry. Healthcare and the raging debate about either Obama's healthcare plans or potentially new healthcare plans that are being proposed by candidates today, as we're looking at the political process, are really all driving towards the need for efficiency, certainly on the clinical side. But what we're seeing is more and more organizations are actually creating efficiencies in the back office that drive profits to the bottom line that can be used to then put that money back into their operations and, in fact, in many cases, help save lives. So I'm going to draw a reference from a recent presentation that was done by the head of accounting, accounts payable at Resurrection Healthcare. Resurrection is actually a Brainware customer. They began an automation initiative just over a year ago. And when you kind of look at where they stood, they had a little more than 22 FTEs in their accounts payable department. They did a transaction volume. They were doing a little over 1,000 transactions a day, about 1,100 transactions a day. And when you look at the number of staff people they had and the number of transactions they were processing, they were doing about 61 invoices per FTE per day across those various categories that you see there. They had about 18,500 vendors in their vendor master file, and they used a combination of technologies, including McKesson, which was their primary ERP system. They run all of their technology on Microsoft SQL Server Enterprise Edition. They were doing about 13% of their invoice volume was EDI, or electronic data interchange, and that left about 87% of which was paper. So they began an evaluation process, went through an RFP, looked at solution alternatives that included things like e-invoicing, which they pretty quickly ruled out because you find that while e-invoicing and EDI and so forth can help with AP automation, invariably you still end up with some percentage of documents that are coming in either as paper or as electronic documents being sent in as fax or email or the like. They also looked at outsourcing, which many of our customers do, and determined that, in fact, the total cost of that, in fact, was much, much higher than looking for an in-house automation solution. And then, of course, they looked at other vendor-led, types of automation solutions from names that you may recognize. They invited the vendors on site, and the evaluation criteria effectively helped them look at the different offerings with a consistent set of metrics. What this ultimately resulted in was what we call a bake-off. So it's a live demonstration with a representative set of documents passing through the system. The idea being, if you want to process invoices in this case and emulate a production environment, the best way to go about doing that and evaluating what kind of results you can get is literally do one of these blind tests. Set the software up, run the documents through them, sight unseen, and see what the results are. And in this case, Brainware's results were quite good, on par with what we typically see. We got 94% of the fields were lifted automatically off those invoices, again on documents sight unseen, and 24% of them went straight through. So from the point of receipt to posting in McKesson, all of the fields were extracted and validated and went straight through. And this is what we think of as a touchless pass or a lights-out process. And in fact, in Resurrection's own words, we're the only vendor that was able to really show this in a measurable way. The results since then, we took a snapshot of Resurrection Healthcare just about a month and a half ago, and what they had done is reduced their staffing by 30% while increasing transaction volume per FTE by nearly 65%. They've gone through an effort to actually clean up some of their vendor master files, so they deactivated roughly 10,000 vendors, and in so doing, had driven down the paper processing to 10%. Now, I happen to know that since then they've gotten even further, but their goal is to get to nearly 100% electronic and completely away from paper. And as you can see, I mean, they're clearly on their way to doing that. Today, with some continued tuning of the system, they're at about 95% field level extraction on PO-based invoices, and are getting 45% are going straight through. They recently implemented the technology to help capture and process their non-PO invoices as well, and you can see the rates of automation that they're getting there. The most important thing, though, is they see that in the near term, this organization will be able to get to about 90%, maybe more, of their PO-based invoices will go straight through the system, untouched, and that'll give them an overall yield of about 50% straight through, recognizing that, of course, non-PO invoices will stop just by definition. I bring that up, and I think that's a great way to sort of illustrate what I see as a changing paradigm in processes like accounts payable. What we see, and this was a term that was coined by Melissa Webster, who runs the ECM practice for IDC, the research group, is really shifting from a workflow-assisted or workflow-enabled human process where, regardless of whether you're processing paper or even if you've begun with imaging solutions, there is still human resource intensive to sort the documents, capture the data and validate it, and then route it, for approvals before it's actually passed into a back-end system. I contrast that with something that's truly exception-based, whereby documents can be captured, the data can be lifted and validated, pushed into the back-end system automatically, all without any human intervention, with the exception of when a document requires something that really has to be handled by a human being. And that really, I think, should set the bar for what technology is doing in this space today. Before I go any further, though, I want to define a couple of terms, because when we talk about data capture, the technology we call intelligent data capture, sometimes there are misconceptions about what it does, or even some confusion about how it ties in with things that you might be familiar with, such as forms recognition or even traditional OCR. So the first thing to make sure we understand is character recognition. Character recognition, also known as OCR, is literally the technology that recognizes a B from different from an A or an 8 and a W and an L and so forth. This technology is mature. We actually use third-party technology in our application to help with character recognition, so that we can take, for instance, a scanned document and make it something that's machine readable. So again, character recognition, you probably are familiar with it under the moniker of OCR or ICR for handprint and the like. And for this type of technology, it's very, very good. There are several different vendors out in the market space, each who excel in different areas, but it's a product that we actually use in Distiller, and I'll show you where that fits in just a few minutes. More important, though, than character recognition, right, is what we think of as field recognition or field extraction. This is where you get the value of eliminating keystrokes. When I talk about a field being a word, a set of characters, a date, a PO number, these types of things. Extracting fields of data is critically important to, like I said, eliminating the manual keying that would otherwise be required to capture that data, right? But ultimately what we're looking for is what we think of as a touchless process. And so this is perhaps the most challenging in most organizations, but is also really where the true ROI is yielded. A touchless process says, okay, not only do I get the characters and the fields, but I actually get all of the information lifted and validated off of the document, so that the entire document itself can go through without anybody manually intervening. This is a combination of both technology and business process optimization, but as I'll share as we go through here, is completely within reach, for more and more organizations today, and this is what really drives the transformation of process. The limiter to this, though, has traditionally been paper documents, business documents, unstructured documents. The paper pile, which seems almost as large today as it was even 10 years ago in most organizations, is really what I think of as the last mile, that last frontier that really needs to be, optimized to get that true touchless task, that true efficiency for a lot of the transactions we conduct today. And you can see, when we say unstructured or semi-structured, we use language like that, that typically involves documents, transactional documents like invoices, orders, payments, remits, and so forth, as well as documents that need to be sorted or classified, indexed into a document management system. And like I said, the challenge with this is the fact that these documents come in all shapes and sizes. They come in different layouts, such that trying to automate them by defining what the document looks like is impractical, if not completely impossible, for some volume of documents in most organizations. And so that's really the area that we focused on when we've created this technology to try and help recognize documents that need to be processed in your organizations. The other thing that's interesting to note is a recent study that was done by IDC shows that the volume of information that not only needs to be captured or potentially used in business systems, but that also needs to be accessible is growing exponentially. In fact, between 2009 and the expected volume in 2020, they expect a 44-fold increase to 35 zettabytes of electronic information. Just to put it in perspective, a single zettabyte is a trillion gigabytes. So almost an incomprehensible volume of data that's, exists today, but will continue to be created over the coming years. So it really creates a very interesting set of problems. Simply put, it's about how do we get data off of the documents that we need for transactional systems like our ERP, be it Microsoft Dynamics or other leading ERP solutions. How do we get the data off and into those systems quickly, accurately, and with the least amount of time, as well as how do we get it into our content management systems properly indexed so that we can then go back and retrieve it. This is the fundamental challenge, and as I mentioned, this is how and why we've developed the core technology. I'm going to spend a minute and go into a little bit more detail about these processes and what a manual process can involve in the case of something like accounts payable. Manual processing typically limits control and visibility because of the steps that are often involved in that process, plus also the fact that they're often handled in different areas of your organization. And so it creates some redundancy, certainly some isolation of these different processes, and generally opportunities to create much more efficiency throughout. So simply put, you may have more or fewer of these specific sub-processes within in an AP, for example, but sort of representative, we typically see the following. So document capture generally precedes data entry. Document capture may happen in your mailroom. It may happen at scan time, where typically documents are being manually sorted. Before they then, so this assumes that you're keying from an image as opposed to paper, but assuming that you then do the scanning, then the keying is done from an image, which then says if you're processing an invoice, for example, there's some amount of matching, be it the line pairing if you have a PO compliant environment, GL coding depending on how you need to apply the appropriate expenses to the right general ledger accounts. There's typically an approval process that may take place for non-PO invoices before it's actually passed into this back-end, whatever your back-end system is, again, be it a Microsoft or other type of system. Throughout this process, because these are often discrete components, you really lack visibility until the information is in the system, which makes things like audit, compliance, process refinement rather challenging in most organizations. I contrast that with a fully automated solution, and this is really where Brainware can help drive significant value in a process like this. So, as I mentioned early on, we really create something that's exception-based, where from the point of receipt through the approval, I should say through the validation process, to the matching process, ultimately to the posting process in the back-end system, number one, you get visibility because of the reporting and analytics that can be done through the entire process, plus only those things that require a manual operator to review them are the ones that are kicked out. So really, in many organizations, this allows complete process transformation. So with that, I'm going to take, let me just take a moment here and ask a second polling question. So I'm going to launch the poll. This question actually asks, how many people are actually keying data from documents in your organization today? When I ask the question, think as broadly as you're able. I think for some organizations, maybe if you're with AP, that's as much visibility as you have. But if you have a broader view and you have a sense for how many people are keying data, like we've described, go ahead and include that in your answer. And I will wait just a few moments for the poll results to come in, and then I'll be happy to share them with you. Okay, great. Okay, so I will close the poll and share the results. And it's interesting to see that nearly 50% have more than 25 people keying data. I'm not surprised by that at all, because if you think pretty broadly, virtually every document that comes into the organization, be it an invoice, a remit, a contract, has some amount of data that's being keyed either to process that document as a transaction or to store and index it. So thank you for that input. That's helpful to see. Okay. So we've created technology that helps, as I mentioned, eliminate a lot of that manual keying and generate a number of benefits that help you really process documents in your organization in a very, very different way. This technology is patented. We call it the Brainware engine, and it fundamentally does three things. The technology is designed to classify documents based on their content, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. But this is learning technology that can use a small sample set of documents to recognize a broad diversity of document layouts based on the content of the document itself. That classification process precedes an extraction process, which simply means, when I say extraction, I'm referring to the fact that the system can lift specific fields of data off of documents based on their context. Many folks are familiar with traditional template-based or rules-based, document recognition. This is completely template-free. And so what that allows you to do is run documents that vary in layout through the system without having to, have defined the layout in the system before it's processed. And it can do so across different languages as well. And then finally, we've actually invented search technology that helps us overcome some of the traditional limitations such as OCR errors, misspellings, slight variations in the way things are written. And we use that search to help validate the information that we're extracting from documents, plus use it as a way to search through repositories of information for documents that may not have been indexed. And you can do some pretty powerful things there as well. I use this as an example of sort of information or words in context and how they are then, are given meaning. You may have actually seen, this particular paragraph of this study, but I think it raises a very good sort of representation of kind of what we're talking about here. And the ability of sort of the human brain to make sense out of words even when they're completely misspelled. So, of course, you can read through this, because of the way the words are spelled. But I draw reference to a specific word at the top, which would have no meaning whatsoever unless it were part of the sentence. So if I were using a traditional template-based data extraction tool and I came across that word in isolation and even was able to sort it out, it really could be two different things. It could be cloud or it could be could. And it's only by putting it into context that I can choose the appropriate value and process, in this case, the word automatically. This is a very good representation of what information in context means and therefore what the Brainware technology is doing. If you're familiar kind of with traditional forms-based techniques, there's really been a maturing of these technologies that's occurred, gosh, over the last 10 years, but certainly has really come to market even in the last few. And we think of it in sort of these characteristic buckets. Template-based recognition is truly, show me a zone and allow me to anchor a spot, and I can read what's in the specific field. That's given way to what we think of as free-form recognition. So if I can define a set of keywords and then string through the OCR text, I know if I see, for example, a keyword that says invoice number, and I see a string of digits immediately following that, there's a high likelihood that that's in fact an invoice number. And so some technology you may be familiar with uses what we think of as free-form recognition. Memory recognition then goes one step further to say, okay, if I see, for example, an invoice or a document from a specific vendor, and it's processed once or twice or several times, the system is able to learn the pattern of that specific document layout, and so the next time it sees it, it can process it automatically. That works very well if you have a limited diversity of document layouts. However, it starts to become quite burdensome if document layouts are changing frequently, or if you have such a significant volume of layouts, as some of our customers do, that you don't want to go through that whole training process from the get-go. Intelligent data capture is really what we think of as third generation, or what today's technology, the state of the art, is capable of doing, which, as I've described, is based on not having to see a set of keywords, a set of layouts, even having to have read a specific layout previously in order to be able to capture the relevant results. And so with that, I think you get some tremendous scalability that has never previously existed in the market space. The traditional forms techniques have been around for years. In fact, I would say they're most of the traditional forms products that you may be familiar with, imaging and document recognition products, are actually very good. They get very high levels of recognition. And so if you're processing structured forms, I mean, these can be great solutions. What vendors in the market space have done in some cases is tried to bolt on, either through acquisition or some of those methods that I've described a moment ago, have tried to bolt on additional intelligence to sort of reach into this additional unstructured information, which, you know, if you recall from a couple of slides ago, represents actually a vast majority of the documents that flow through, you know, our organizations today. But Brainware developed, you know, a single solution from the ground up to address the challenges of unstructured information right out of the box. And like I said, that gives us some pretty unique capabilities in the space. The product platform itself looks something like this. And so if we take a moment and think about where Distiller, Brainware Distiller, fits in the context of a process like this, it looks something like this. Reading this particular screen from left to right, we input or receive documents that can be of virtually any type and from virtually any input device. Now, many of our customers are scanning documents, so we pick them up either out of a database or off a file system. Once they've been scanned, they can be scanned by whatever existing scanning software you have in place today, but we pick them up as an electronic image. We can, of course, also work with things like faxes, emails, attachments of virtually any type as sort of the input for the document. Upon input, the first thing that we do is, which isn't specifically stated here, but if it's a scanned document or an image file, the first thing we do is we OCR it. And we do that so that we can make that image file machine readable. We've got third-party OCR technology that's built right into the product. So, so when it's an image, a TIFF, for example, we pick that up, we OCR it so that we've got the results. Immediately then, the second thing that we do is we classify the document. So for mixed document types, literally coming right off the scanner, we sort them based on their type. We've got customers, in fact, one I'll refer to in a few moments. We've got a customer that does about 35 million documents annually that represent 1,000 different document types. And so they're processing these documents. This is actually an energy company that, you know, they're both paper and electronic documents, native electronic documents that need to be sorted before they can be hosted into their ECM platform on the back end. So Distiller, as a front end, is doing all of that classification and indexing automatically. Once we know what the document is, then you can extract the relevant information. So, for example, you sort your invoices separately from your remits, your contracts, correspondence, and the like, and based on that, we can extract the specific fields of data that are required to process that specific document type. As I mentioned, we do that without having to use templates and so forth, and so we can get very, very high extraction rates without having had to have seen a specific example of each document. With that data, then we validate it. So if there is reference data, master data that we can check either in your ERP system or in another database, we'll certainly do so. We do some validation against existing information on the document. Point being that if we're going to pass this information from document input into a back-end system in a completely touchless manner, we want to ensure that if it goes straight through, that it is in fact correct. Oftentimes what we're doing for transactional information, like invoices, is we'll pass it into the ERP system, such as a Microsoft Dynamics. We'll pass the image file itself. We'll update that with metadata and indexing values to store it in your SharePoint or other ECM or DMS system. And then, of course, we can pass that into other enterprise apps as well. Throughout this process, if a document cannot be fully recognized, we can kick it out so that an exception queue, a person can sit there and look at specifically that piece of information that needs to be validated before processing further. Throughout this entire process as well, we have visibility, which is our reporting package that allows you to not only track the status of these documents, but actually look at the information as it's being captured, so you can really get up-to-the-minute, real-time information from those documents as well. We recommend that this run on a SQL Server platform, and it's been tested on SQL Server. In fact, I'll reference that in a few moments. It's also newly available, Distiller is newly available as a service hosted on Azure. This is new to the Azure Marketplace. Traditional licensing is still available for on-premises based deployments, but this is a new option that we're in the process of rolling out just now. And so if you think you have a customer or you're a customer that might be a good fit for an Azure platform, you could just let us know. We'll be happy to follow up with you after the presentation. If you've ever tried to use search in your maybe in your email or with another application, and you've not been able to find something even though you know it's there, it's often because you may have misspelled it, may have indexed it incorrectly, or it may have a slight spelling variation. This type of search not only improves the kind of the quality of responses that we get when we're doing the data capture, but it can also be appended to an archive to help you find information very, very quickly based on the full text that's included in the document repository. Global Brain is the standalone search application, which can be either embedded in an archive or run as a standalone application to help you provide these kinds of queries. The product generally ships with our reporting, kind of our business intelligence suite. We call it visibility. This provides for dashboard, reporting, and actually drill through analytics so that, as I mentioned, you can get not only a status on how the system is performing on any given day or at any given time, you can see how the people are performing that are interacting with those documents, and you can actually summarize and do drill through to get the business information from those documents as well. We're also very proud of the fact that not only is the technology yielding for many of these customers, but many of our customers go on to really achieve the very best in process level transformation as enabled by the automation. And so in the healthcare space, Her Majesty's Prison Service as well, in the shared services space over in the UK, and the list goes on and on. To the Mayo Clinic, recently won an award from Treasury and Risk where for technology excellence they were one of 3 finalists with Cisco and Google. Mayo took the silver. Cisco won the award for technology excellence in the Treasury function, and the Mayo Clinic beat Google for technology excellence in the Treasury function, or in purchase to pay. With these customer successes, Brainware has really been able to achieve a market share leadership position in the intelligent data capture space. The results that you see here were from a recent study that was done. In fact, some of you may have participated in this study that was done globally, conducted by the Institute of Financial Operations, in which they asked about which intelligent data extraction solutions are currently being used to lift data in accounts payable. And you can see Brainware Distiller was the market share leader for this year and for the first time. But you can also see there's quite a large volume of the respondents that currently aren't using this type of solution, and so it's interesting to note And presumably part of why you all have tuned in today is to learn more about this technology. When Brainware wins, it's typically, I'm told, it's for one of, if not all three of the reasons that I've listed here. The data extraction, our ability to eliminate keystrokes, is unsurpassed in the market space today. This generates productivity because of the lack of, that reduction in keystrokes. And so whether your organization is looking at doing greater volume with your existing resources or shifting your resources or headcount into other areas, extracting data from documents is often a key component of be it an ERP, an ECM, or a shared services strategy. The system is also highly scalable. Microsoft, we partnered up with Microsoft. They actually took Brainware Distiller into the technology center in nearby Reston, Virginia, and ran a benchmark test in early 2011. There was an investment in hardware to set this up. We ran it on a SQL Server Enterprise set of instances there, and we're able to benchmark in excess of 5 million pages a day running through the system. So even in the largest organizations in the world that need to capture and extract data from complex semi-structured documents, I'm not aware of a vendor in our space that can do a higher volume of complex documents than you get with Distiller. And then finally, it's about time to value. Because of the fact that it doesn't require that one-to-one matching, of a document layout to an inbound document, the system sets up very quickly. As I mentioned, I mean, we put full-scale systems into production in weeks. Where oftentimes, the traditional systems that you might be aware of take months or years to finally get them tuned up. Just notes about Brainware as a company. My office, we're based in Northern Virginia, in Ashburn, which is not far from Dulles Airport, just outside of Washington, D.C. We've got sales, support, and development offices in England. We actually just recently announced the opening of a sales office in central London. We've got offices in Germany, and we've actually got a European headquarters office in Switzerland. So it really allows us to serve customers around the world. In fact, roughly half of our customers are in the U.S. and the other half are outside the States in and around Europe and other parts of the world. The technology itself is patented. As I referenced, in fact, we actually have 20 issued and 40 pending patents, more than $100 million invested in R&D. And, the team of scientists that has built this core technology from the ground up with us has actually been working together for, more than 15 years and has been with the company, throughout. So one of our real strengths and assets. And then finally, we tend to work with the largest organizations in the world, which gives us some great insight, quite frankly, into how these document processes are running. But most notably, these organizations have purchased this technology because it delivers hard dollar, demonstrable ROI. And so, as a company, we're quite proud of that. But I think we also can bring a lot to the table in terms of experience as we're working, with organizations to help them automate around this type of technology. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you found today's webinar informative. But of course, if you do have lingering questions, don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, thanks again. Take care.